Thank you very much, and welcome to all you Zim News, as well as the Sources Media Network. We are discussing about the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, shortly known as CAB3. My name is Kolsani Ngube. Today I'm joined by a very vibrant young person in the opposition struggle. He has seen it through, rose through the ranks in the youth league of the opposition, and was once an MP, but unfortunately, he found himself on the other side of the coin in it. His name is Ostallos Siziba. Ostallos, thank you very much and welcome to the channel as we try to dissect and discuss this new amendment, which has taken the country by storm, and as well as is gaining traction and a very big point to talk about. And just to begin with, what's your view on this CAB3?
Thank you very much, and greetings to fellow Zimbabweans and Africans and citizens in the diaspora. I think that we have expressed our view, which is an unequivocal rejection of the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3 for reasons that we have stated, that it does not represent the will of the people of Zimbabwe, and we've expressed our rejection fundamentally of the bill because it lacks process legitimacy. And for all these other technical issues that we've raised that are legal in nature and in character, but beyond those technical issues, which are interpretations of the clauses, we've rejected the bill because it does not represent the will of the people of Zimbabwe. We don't think that it is what the nation should be prioritizing at the present moment, given the state of our economy and given the state of social services in the country. We think there are so many things that central government and the regime here in Harare should be focusing on instead of amputating the constitution of the country.
Let's begin on the aspect of the processes that you allude to. What ought to have happened in your view?
Look, process legitimacy is an important phenomenon in politics. I'm a political scientist by training, and we've argued that the first thing is that legally it is clear in the dictates of the constitution of this country that if there is a change of what in the 2013 constitution we call the sacrosanct provisions of the constitution, which is the life term of office of the executive, of the legislature, it must go through back to the people. Secondly, the argument that emerged out of the constitution making process then was also about the fact that the country was coming out of a 3-decade tenure of Robert Mugabe, which the constitution could not be able to provide caveats. So one of the reasons why we went to that constitutional debate and process at the time was because we said, how do we at law end this tyranny of leadership of Robert Mugabe? And that's why it was agreed upon that we have to at law introduce term limits in that constitution. And so it became very clear that for you to change that, just like it emerged out of the people, we must take it back to the people to debate and make an agreement that, one, the constitution wants to be changed in terms of the term of office of the executive and the legislature. And secondly, if that term of office ought to benefit the incumbents, the agreement in that constitution codified law is that it must be taken to a referendum. And let me touch the idea of referendum for the benefit of fellow citizens and those of our colleagues who are in support of the bill. That man must understand this. Society functions on the basis of confidence. The relationship between those who govern and those that are being governed is a social contract. It is bound by trust. In 2000, when a debate about a constitution came into the fore of the post-independent state, it was only natural for Robert Mugabe and the Zanu PF government at the time that the only way for us to be able to get consent of the people to change the constitution, we have to go to a referendum. There was no dictates at the time of the law that says we must go, but it is only a natural political phenomena because a government must get its mandate from the people. So to secure that, the current administration, even without a mandate, is a stolen mandate for all intents and purposes. The 2023 election did not produce a leadership wanted by the, but let's forget that debate. Let's say that the current regime and establishment emerged out of the will of the people in the next election. That will of the people was clear, that you get it from August 31 up to the same time August 31 in 5 years. So in order to secure an extra mandate, you have to go back to the people. Either you go to an election or you go to a referendum. It is only natural, political. Because if you do this without the will of the people, the problem is that the country will continue without a social contract. And a country without a social contract cannot be predicted in terms of where that country is going. That's why possibilities of instability emerge in any country. Go and study West Africa, go and study all countries that have gone through turmoil. It's because those who govern don't want to secure the will of the people.
But coming to that, it's Zanu PF is saying we are not changing the term limits. We are changing the election cycle. That's first and foremost. It's a line. Do you agree with that thought?
Look, it's clear propaganda. The term of office, when Jelas Mawarire took the government of national unity to court,
Yes.
it was precisely on the basis of the lifespan of that leadership of the government of national unity. And the court ruled on that. It is the highest decision-making court of appeal in the country, which made a decision that the lifespan of the presidents and prime ministership of President Tsvangirai and Robert Mugabe had come to an expiry based on the date to which the GNU was signed. So anything, any technical argument and propaganda around whether you call it a donkey, you call it a term extension, you call it a cycle, it is clear that you got a mandate on the 31st of August. On the 31st, after 5 years, that mandate expires. Anything that changes that date speaks to extension of the term of office of the incumbents. And secondly, once the incumbents benefit from that, whatever characterization you give to it, anyone that benefits that must secure the money to say, look, we have changed the lifespan of parliament, we've changed the lifespan of the executive. And people say it's okay, change it. And secondly, we also want to benefit from it. The people must decide in a referendum, because it is the only process that secures, especially fellow citizens and my brother thought that, especially given how chaotic the hearings were. All those things, like I've said in the beginning, is about process legitimacy. It is clear to any right-thinking person, including those in Zanu, including the institutions of the state in the form of the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, it condemned in no uncertain terms that the constitutional hearing process that happened in the past days were a charade. So it puts all the shame in the hands of those that saying there is legitimacy in this process, because citizens were not allowed to express themselves. Those were reduced to be Zanu PF caucus meetings because it was a hearing without democracy. It was a hearing without hearing the people. So it's like some members of parliament who are beneficiaries came to, in our example, in Keta, where I stay in Chabalala. The closest venue was in Keta. Forget the gerrymandering of the venues themselves.
Yes.
Forget that. Say, okay, even in those two venues that were there in Bulawayo, which is in the city hall and in Keta, you see that security manning the venue were members of the ruling party. Secondly, some of us, legitimate citizens of the area, were not allowed to say our opinions in that hearing. Secondly, thirdly, you can see that the people that were then allowed to speak, people passed from the other part of the country, all of them clueless, barefoot about what is being debated. They would just come. That's why they ended up saying party slogans. So it tells you that there was no legitimacy in the process. So the only way to secure legitimacy, because I mean, if the regime says that we hate the people, it is only natural that we must take this thing into a referendum and hear what the people of Zimbabwe are going to say.
But given the past Ostallos elections that we've had, which are, that's how a referendum ought to run like, 2023, 2018, the opposition has had challenges. Do you think that even if you have a referendum today, you'll be able to go out, canvass views, motivate people to reject it, given what has happened already?
That's a very fair point, and a point of reflection within the rank and file of the democratic movement at the present moment. In politics, when situations happen, people sit down, do scenarios, and so forth in order to inform our interventions. But you must understand that the amendment of the Constitution is not an opposition issue. It is not an issue of only people in the opposition. In our engagement when we were in the movement for democratic change, we always argued about the sacrosanctity of the constitution of the country, about political tolerance in the country, about respecting institutions of the state. We argued with people not only within the opposition rank, but the people within the body politic of the country, because the system that the current regime is creating does not only bite those in the opposition, it will come to bite those who are in the forefront of creating this current mess and chaos. That's why we've appealed to the conscience, not of those only within the democratic movement, even members of the Zanu PF. Look at the current state of our economy at the present moment. Unemployment in the country is young people, youth unemployment in the country is above 90%. Those people are not in the opposition. These are ordinary Zimbabweans and members of Zanu PF.
Yes.
That's why all of them at the present moment, young people within the ruling party are crying because of limited opportunities that their party is able to provide to their members of that party. So it shows you that when poverty hits you, it doesn't look at the color of your political party. When you are involved in an accident in the road, as we see every day, the accident doesn't look at the color of your political party. It looks at the fact that you are a citizen, you are taken to Parenya to Ompilo Hospital, there is no medicine. People in Zanu PF have lost their relatives to this decayed healthcare system. So I'm saying this to dramatize the importance of how it is important. Look at members of Zanu PF who were targeted by Restore Legacy in 2017.
Yes.
They are the people who were in the forefront of sustaining a system that is not democratic. Some of them are living in exile to this very day because of this system. We have argued as ordinary Zimbabweans that, look, we must create a system that will, a criminal justice system that will protect you regardless of your political views. Because you will fall victim of the very same system that you are creating. So that's why we've argued that the bill does not threaten the opposition. It threatens the core of our constitutional democracy, which everyone, whether you are in this party or in that party, must be able to resist. That is our basis.
But you and I agree that the state of opposition is fragmented in such that there is no guarantee that even if there was if it was put to question itself on its own, it would mount a very big challenge against CAB3.
I can say with certainty that if this process is going to a referendum, it demands something on the part of the opposition. I think I would not rather say the opposition. I would say that it demands so much from the democratic contingent and the progressive forces in the country. And I must characterize them. The progressive forces in this respect, it means students. You see that the president of the Students' Union is currently in detention and so forth. So the students are part and parcel of the progressive movement in the country. The organized labor is part of the progressive movement. The progressive clergy, members of the church, who have expressed unequivocal rejection of the bill. The progressive members of the media, the progressive farmers in this country, and war veterans, who in fact went into war of liberation fundamentally to fight for universal suffrage, which is clearly under threat by the current party of Chitepo. So it is in the interest of the war veterans who lost their colleagues and friends to defend the constitution, because they went fundamentally to war for that right for black people, for the majority of Zimbabweans to have a right to choose leaders of their choice. So it is an indictment in the liberation struggle, and the party of Herbert Chitepo to find it at the forefront of butchering that sacrosanct right that made our forefathers and grandfathers go to war. We fought with Smith because Smith was saying a black person does not have a right to choose the leadership, particularly the executive. It was a preserve of the elites, which were white. But what have we done? Like Fanon predicted. Franz Fanon predicted this current predicament of the nationalists, that they are going to reproduce the Smith regime, which is what we're seeing today, that the current regime is going to exactly what Ian Douglas Smith was saying, that as ordinary people, we don't have a say, because they're taking that right, which they went to war for, and handing it over to 210 members of parliament and plus or minus 100 senators. So you are taking what exactly your party represented. It is an indictment to the liberation project, which is why some of us have argued ideologically that the ruling party, in its current character and stature, is an aberration of the liberation project. And the democratic movement that we are asking in terms of its composition at the present moment must be able to understand that the moment goes beyond ourselves. The moment we are, my brother, goes beyond ourselves. So we have to be, because natural, what even the hearing proved, because we deployed people into the venues in Harare, in Bulawayo, and so forth. It is clear because we maintain a mass character as a democratic movement. So because we're a mass organization, we're a mass movement with a huge support base, it shows, it puts so much responsibility in our shoulders. If this process is to go to a referendum, the question is not the current status of the opposition. The question is, what is it that we are going to do with an understanding of the burden that is in our shoulders? Because we have a mass organization. It places a huge responsibility in us more than it places on students, on organized labor, on journalists, that we have to sit down and say, we are going into a referendum, because I can tell you that if we are to go to a referendum, the people of Zimbabwe have expressed their opinion on this bill. What we only have to do is being a conveyor belt of those aspirations and provide a platform where people can find political expression. That's our task. Our task is to provide that platform, my brother. Because Zimbabweans, you can do a poll. Parliament did a poll. They ended up rejecting it and so forth. Because they know, even members of parliament that went to the hearings, they knew that the people of Zimbabwe are clear, including members of Zanu PF, ordinary members. I'm not talking about political elites that have access to the feeding trough. No, no, no. Let even this bill be taken into a secret ballot in Zanu PF. Zanu PF will not win a secret ballot in its membership about this bill. That is the extent of how Zimbabweans are rejecting this bill. Our task is to just organize people so that they find expression and say no.
You speak what I want to come to. The task of the opposition is to organize people, which is lacking. That part, it is lacking because ostensibly there is no leader, I would say. But that as may be, let's come to the clauses that it brings to. First and foremost, it brings the aspect of removing direct voting of the president. South Africa is doing it. Botswana is doing it. Why not Zimbabwe?
Look,
these are countries that would argue within our region. Democratically, Botswana has enjoyed stability. In fact, we have looked up to Botswana as the model of democracy. There have been change of governments, even change of political party leadership. Not only government, not only presidents, even political party leading them. There's been a change through that system. What's bad about it?
Look, I'm happy that you have given reference to Botswana and South Africa as democratic jurisdictions. And it says to you, you can go to Botswana and find out how do they emerge with that current political system. It went into a referendum. It was not a process that was designed by political elites. It's a process that went to the people, and people expressed how they want to choose leadership and how they want to elect. South Africa uses a parliamentary constitutional democracy, And that process emerged out of the will of the people. It's not a process that was imposed hitherto to the people. So you must understand the difference. Secondly, there is a lazy argument by Zanu PF says intellectual. I know the part of Robert Mugabe no longer values intellectual labor. There is serious antipathy in Zimbabweans body politic to intellectual labor. It is clear that the part of Robert Mugabe replaced intellectuals with these korokozas and so forth. But that, because if they were intellectuals within ZANU, they were going to tell them one about process legitimacy, so that we are like Botswana. Because the people of Botswana, the people of South Africa, agree with the political system that's there. All political parties, all members of society agree that this is the best way.
MPs carry the mandate of the people.
Precisely.
Therefore, they can speak. If they can speak on aspects of maternal health, if they can speak on aspects of death penalty, why can they not speak about voting, which is just a mere component of democracy?
Look, you are finding a wrong cure to the problem. The cure is not the process of us electing a president. That is a problem in the country. The problem in the country is how we conduct the process, including how we produce members of parliament. Members of parliament in South Africa are elected democratically. Let me give an example so that we don't go further with this lazy debate by Zanu PF half-baked intellectuals. A member of parliament won an election in Chegud. You are a journalist, you know it.
Yes.
The court in the country declared, in fact, not the court, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission
Yes.
declared the wrong candidate. Nduna
Yes.
went into parliament without a mandate, served for 5 years, sat in critical committees. So this is the person, my brother, that in your own submissions are saying, Nduna, if we are in 2018, you are saying this person can go and then define what the people of Kwekwe are saying about the president when he has no mandate from that people. Go and start the elections in the country, particularly parliamentary elections. We had how many members of parliament? We went into Kwekwe to campaign for a member of parliament there. The member of parliament there, during a rally, President Chamisa was speaking in the rally. Machete-wielding gangs of Zanu PF came.
2022.
We lost a comrade in that rally.
Yes, Bongani Ncube.
You see, we lost Mboneni in that rally.
Yes.
So it shows you that what you have to cure, my brother, is not whether we elect the president via parliament or via the direct ballot. It's about how we conduct elections in the country. If you knew, all of us, I mean, it's even funny because we're giving reference. I was elected myself in parliament. Where am I right now? Who went into that seat? So will that person, the current composition of parliament, would you say that parliament can decide on behalf of the people? Where did they secure that mandate? You get the point? So if we are to go to process, I'm telling you that if parliament was legitimate, it defeated legitimate members of parliament, we wouldn't be having this debate now.
But yours was an issue of an internal system. So therefore, we can't then judge to say...
Look, my brother, it's an exhausted debate. Yes. It's an exhausted debate about whether the current onslaught on the democratic movement was a product of internal or product of external. Any rational person has got the answer. We don't have to go to that subject. Any rational Zimbabwean and an observer of the process itself, we can even go to the election itself that produced the presidents in 2023. What does SADC say about that election? What does the African Union say about that election? What does all the observer missions that were in the country say about the outcome of the election? So what is being contested is not how we elect a president or how we elect parliament. It's about the process that has to be there. It must produce the will of the people. I was observing elections in Botswana. You can feel the atmosphere when you are there. That this process is democratic. It's not a ritual. What we conduct in this country, my brother, is a ritual. So those of us who want stability and progress that you are talking about, that we enjoy and see in South Africa, when there was an imposter that emerged in MK party to claim MK part of Jacob Zuma,
yes,
the court was clear that no, this is an imposter. You get my point? The court was clear that, look, this is an imposter. He doesn't enjoy this right to do this. Because the court does not only look at issues just at law, it looks at questions around stability, it looks at what it implies to South Africa's constitutional democracy. So that's why the court in South Africa could not go into the whims of political elites. It's an independent judiciary. Can you argue about the independence of the judiciary in South Africa? What do you say about the judiciary in this country? It doesn't need me. It needs the law society of this country. Go and read the law society's position on this bill. It tells you, my brother, it tells you about the crisis in the country. So I believe that what we must fix, if Zanu PF is confident that it has got support of the people, it must not fear, it must not use fear, but not use violence that we see across the country. Let people decide on who, if parliamentarians are to secure their mandate legitimately, and then parliament can decide. And let the people say, I know these are our members of parliament, and then let them go and decide. But people will not allow it because they know that they didn't vote for all those charlatans that are in parliament.
Let's also look at this important aspect of it, to say the aspect of extending from 5 to 7. We are dealing with the toxicity of elections. We are trying to nip it. Do you agree? Is there nipping here?
Look, we have.
I'm looking from this perspective. Say, from 2020, from 2000, when Zimbabwe witnessed the birth of a vibrant opposition led by Morgan Tsvangirai, the contestation has been about the president. Don't you think that probably, if we remove first of almost 7 years to 5 to 7 years, we remove the voting of the president, maybe we could deal away with the aspect of contestation and toxicity
again, wrong solution to the problem facing the country. It's clear. And all of us are not prophets. We can suspend everything and wait for that time. Let me tell you, we have argued as a democratic movement that our elections are toxic because they don't reflect the will of the people. That's what we must reflect on. How does ZEC conduct the elections in this country? What I thought we're supposed to be dealing with is how do we make sure that we have an independent, professional, accountable Zimbabwe Electoral Commission that produces the will of the people. That is what we must be fixing. It's not the length of office, because you are saying that elections are toxic. It produces a toxic leadership. That's fair. So is the solution extending that toxicity? Because that's basically what you are saying. You are saying continue pontification, continue with the toxicity for 7 years.
There's no time to build the economy. 5 years, you've got the first 2 years after election, you're doing the post-election violence, post-election quarrels. Then you've got also you've got on 1 year to focus on the economy.
Do you think that if we are to give, let's be fair to the regime, if we are to give Zanu PF another 2 years, you think they're going to stabilize the economy? I'll give you figures so that you decide for yourself and Zimbabweans. We spoke about unemployment. It's at 97%. Let's talk about corruption in the country. We, according to the statistics of the state institutions, we lose 1.2 billion annually yes, on illicit outflow of gold alone. That's of gold alone. We have not spoken about diamond. We have not spoken about lithium. Let's look at what has been produced in the public about corruption in the country, in the diamond sector, in the gold sector. The Al Jazeera document was not concocted. It was all there for everyone to see. And where are these people that were in the forefront of illicit outflow of gold? They're in strategic positions of government to this very day. Let's look at the state, the currency in the country. The economy is on free fall. Let's look at Zimbabweans' buying power, ordinary Zimbabweans. Let's look at the levels of extreme poverty in the country. 51% of Zimbabweans are living in abject poverty, in less than $2 a day. That's the reality. That is not about political parties. It's the reality of what is in the ground. So these people are extracting the country. They are looting the country, hook, line, and sinker, for the benefit of them and a tiny minority within the state. These are views that have been expressed by us within the democratic movement, expressed by members of Zanu PF. There are audios of members of the Central Committee of that party complaining about the extractive looting of the country. Everyone is now being reduced to receiving handouts. Where, my brother, you gave reference of Botswana and South Africa.
Yes.
There are philanthropists there. Botswana is one mineral, huge mineral, diamond, with De Beers being one of the investors, greatest investors there. Do you know the CEO of De Beers? You don't. Have you ever seen the CEO of De Beers saying, I'm a philanthropist? Because they do a lot of work in Botswana, De Beers. Where have you seen them saying we're dishing cars to members of the ruling party, to members, to artists? Let's go to South Africa. There are philanthropists in South Africa. Patrick Motsepe. There's capital in South Africa. Oppenheimer, and so forth. Rupert family, the Guptas, and so forth. They are there. There are philanthropists in South Africa. Black billionaires, whether created by the black, the PE program or so forth. They are there. Rich families. It's the second biggest economy.
Yes, in Africa.
Tell me, you have seen President Ramaphosa. Where have you seen President Ramaphosa? Let's just use one example of the legitimate business person, Motsepe. Where have you seen Ramaphosa in the presidential helicopter with Patrick Motsepe dishing out trinkets to members of parliament? And so right now there's a Palapala scandal in South Africa. Parliament ought to vote on impeachment. Did you see any member of the ANC elites or benefactors saying we're giving out cars to members of the Democratic Alliance or the Economic Freedom Fighters? Where have you seen it?
Maybe one would argue that the issue there has been about institutions that are protecting them. But here in Zimbabwe, we've allowed that to happen. You and I have allowed that to happen.
You are now talking.
Where we've empowered individuals to appear they're more stronger than institutions. So therefore, we can't complain about that.
No, look. If people are complicit in a problem, it doesn't cease to be a problem. That we have not sufficiently pushed back on this regime does not make the problem disappear. I've argued that the current strategy by the ruling elites to say we forgo democratic tenets in order to create stability, as you say. What we can come back to this interview, and I'll tell you that I've studied jurisdictions across as a political scientist myself. I've studied Lesotho, I've studied Nigeria, I've studied Kenya around transitions.
Yes.
And I can tell you that while their argument and their lazy intellectuals are saying we are going to postpone the election in order to create stability, I can tell you now that they are actually breeding grounds for instability.
How?
We can...
Because, we have 2 years to focus on working.
Look, it doesn't happen that way, unfortunately.
How?
When you make democratic means of people expressing themselves impossible, like it is happening now, you make undemocratic means possible. Once you see that you are closing open, look at some of us. I mean, the regime, there is naivety within the rank and file of Zanu PF that some of us who are still convinced that government must be changed democratically are patriotic citizens and doing this country a big favor. Because the moment that window closes, the moment that all of us become convinced beyond doubt that governments in the context of this country cannot be changed democratically, the moment that window closes, the moment that ideological standpoint closes, the moment we sit down and say, as an organization and as a movement, our method of struggle changes from being democratic, the danger is not to us. It is to the stability of this country. So it is naive for anyone who's saying we are creating grounds for stability, because it is clear. Go and argue with ordinary people. I stay in Chabalala. You meet people, they tell you, no. And you're a journalist, you can do that survey, you talk to people. People tell you, elections don't work in this country.
Yes.
What are they saying works? You must ask yourself if you are in Zanu PF, because that is not a threat to us. Don't think that I'm a political.
They've lost interest in elections.
Precisely the point.
The question is, do they have another avenue?
The moment, let me tell you, the avenue is there. The moment there is conviction across the country that this avenue, we are actually holding this country to have peace ourselves. Do you know why? Because we have a conviction, some of us, that look, government must be changed democratically, just like the country that we have spoken about. We don't think that government must be changed and democratically for our benefit, because you know why? Once we go that route ourselves, we become a reproduction of Zanu PF, because we're not going to hand over that power peacefully, because we will not have attained it peacefully. So that's why some of us are convinced, because once that avenue closes and we turn into the monsters that the regime wants us to be, the danger is not only to the regime, but it's to the future of this country.
Given the status quo, as things stand, Ostallos, is the avenue of democratic change or the advancement of democracy still something you can pursue as a country?
I'm convinced without doubt. That we must have a government that emerges out of the will of the people.
But given the state of the things...
Let me tell you, my brother. In 2017, after struggling for more than 2 decades in the trenches, we were in a moment like this one. We are in the shadows of 2017 as a country at the present moment. That's why you see that most Zimbabweans argue that at the present moment our hope is the collapse of the technocratic state and internal contradictions in ZANU. Sure, you've heard that.
Yes.
People are saying at the present moment our hope is a military intervention.
You mean some are saying God?
Our argument, look, I can tell you without doubt that God does not. God gave us the brains and the agency as people. It doesn't interfere. This regime also has opening prayers.
I mean, I'm saying when I say God, not in
our destiny as a
nature.
People, our destiny as a people is in our hands. We have to fight as a people, but we have to use democratic means. People can express themselves like we did in November. It was not violent. We expressed ourselves, but without being violent. What we don't subscribe to is the reputation of what Nigeria faced for it had coup recurrences. It doesn't solve the problems of the country. Same thing as Lesotho, it has the same problem. So our view is that we have to have a government that is democratic, that is born out of the will of the people. Because that power must not be taken from the people, not for the purpose of this current regime. Look, if Zanu PF can do whatever, those people are not going to be there forever. Nature will take its course to the liberation generation. But my point is, the future of this country is what some of us worry about. That let us not reproduce another Zanu PF for the next 3 decades. Imagine, I'm here talking to you about democracy, about stability, about progress, and so forth. The next interview you are going to be having with me, we're now in government, we're oppressing the people like we're saying the ZANU must do. That's not what we must do. But what that does, it calls for huge sacrifice on our part. Because we had an easier route, my brother. We were given this option to say, look, it doesn't work. You have gone to an election, ZEC has declared Nangako in 2023. We were given an easier option. As an individual, that option was given to me. Look, young man, you have been elected into parliament. You're given an easier route. Just take the money, there's a car and everything, and go to parliament and serve. That's a mindset of people that have capitulated. But future generations are going to suffer because of present-day decisions that are being made by political elite. I refuse to make that decision because my conscience must remain clear. Even if we don't succeed in removing Zanu PF, I would die a peaceful death, because this struggle, my brother, that we joined, some of us, is about our conscience. It's not service that we just do as wanting to earn a living.
The struggle has lost its direction.
That is where we must begin. How do we find, particularly for us as a generation, we have had these conversations with comrades across to say, look, we need to find, because we have located the problem, to say we must organize ourselves as a people. The solution is not to go for undemocratic means. The solution is also not to join the regime, which majority of the people within And it's understandable. I mean, as someone who has been in the trenches for 20 years.
Yes.
I mean, yeah,
Suffered
human being,
enough.
that person is tired. That person now has kids and families. Some of the comrades within the Democrat, to be fair, some of the comrades in the democratic movement joined the movement when they were young, even younger than me, right? Now they have grandchildren.
But they've nothing to show.
One member of parliament is passed away, and may his soul rest in peace. He said he was a senator. He said, look, my wife and kids and so forth. He was looking now at the material conditions of the survivor. So as a human being, I said, but this old man is selling out understandably because of his material question. What the movement ought to have done is to say, you are a senator, you have run your race, we must allow you to rest. The problem was we continue handing over the mandate to that individual. That individual, because he was tired, he handed over the mandate to Zanu PF because, look, comrades, I've tried my best. So what must happen? President Tsvangirai will always say, if you are tired, just go and rest. Don't undermine the struggle. So what we need at the present moment is new inspiration. Because let me tell you, there is fortitude. But there is appetite. There is need. There are people in this country. I talk to ordinary citizens myself. That's why I've not bent into the interest of the regime. Because I talk to genuine ordinary Zimbabweans. We speak to them, all of us within the democratic movement. People still have the fortitude to fight. People still have the fortitude to advance the democratic struggle, which is the task that is in our shoulders. But
still, Ostallos, if you find it, that even young people are at the mess of Zanu PF.
Precisely.
Look at the number of people who are receiving the trinkets from those benefactors from government. Even young as my age, even younger than me.
Yeah.
Those whom you think maybe they could be working. So do you think that at least this struggle that you want to advance can be taken on board by even young people, given the level of desire of quick wealth, desire of flamboyance?
Look, people are misreading the political climate in the country. Zanu PF takes a few artists and some clowns and comedians and give them cars, thinking that we have won the heart of ordinary people.
But even though people are crying for them,
they
want the trinkets. Yes, they want them.
Wait. It's a Hitler strategy. That's what Hitler would do. You take a chicken, you starve it, then you start removing its feathers, then feed it grains, small grains of maize. It will still come crying to you, right? But it doesn't stop that this chicken is being oppressed, right? So there are millions of young people that are excluded by this political culture that Zanu PF is including. So if we are to organize ourselves as a democratic movement, the conversation is not around those people who are benefiting and the few who wants to benefit from those. Ordinary Zimbabweans in Chabalala know it, as a matter of fact. That's why, and I want you to read the political climate correctly. That's why you see when you go to, I'm a Highlanders supporter. There's been a cry around people singing songs at Papa Fields who are people who have supported the party. You are instructing ordinary members who have not benefited from this regime's money, who have paid their own money, hard-earned money, as informal sector workers fighting the system on a daily basis, to go and sing whatever elites agree. It's not going to be possible. I don't condone certain music, but I can tell you that.
Even at United.
And let me tell you, it shows you the political climate. Far from whatever you are reading in Kose Victor nonsense, the people of Zimbabwe that you think are quiet are finding ways to express. That's why in CAB3 United, people had to tell you that the major threat to this country are two people. The ordinary Wanach in this country are able to tell you that no, these are people who have given money to the clubs. These are people who say we have resuscitated people. Taxpayers are saying that's our money. You are criminals. In Highlanders, after giving us a pass, I said to people when there was a debate about Benjamin Marwan, I said, look, people said, no, Ostallos, stop supporting Highlanders because Benjamin Marwan image. I said, no. You don't understand that Highlanders is not the executive that you are seeing and people signing contracts and that man. No. Highlanders is us. It is a way of life. It's a culture. It is a platform where we find expression as the people of Bulawayo. and our supporters across the country. Because it's not a party of, it's not a team from below. It has chapters across the country. It has a national outlook and character, that Highlanders team. All supporters, after saying, no, we've received $1 million, we've received a bus, and the elites were happy, said, no. I don't sit in the VIP in Papa Fields myself. I sit in Soweto. There are people expressing. That's why I have confidence around the agency in the country.
But still,
it places, lastly.
But what lacks the leadership?
Precisely the point. Where we are guilty as charged is where Karl Marx says, to the extent that the masses are not educated, the vanguard, which is the leadership, is to be blamed.
Definitely.
So our blame is on us failing to build the political agents in the country and turning those conversations happening in ordinary people into the political expressions that are needed to resist dictatorship. So if we are forming a political organization, we've had this debate internally within the democratic movement, that part of the huge investment we have to do is that if we are to have a movement to fight against dictatorship in the not so distant future, part of our investment is going to be dealing with questions of political literacy in the country. If you go to the liberation strike, and we take instructions from that effort, developed by Mao Zedong, it says that you must be able to educate the people so that people can be able to understand, to say, look, if there is no water, if there are potholes, if there is no medicine, if I'm unemployed, where is the problem? So our job and our task, our generational and ideological obligation, which we must fulfill with the urgency that it deserves, is to begin to educate the people to understand the crisis, because the rise of Pentecostalism in the country is owed to that lack of political literacy.
Definitely.
That's why you said, correctly so, that people are now looking for answers to a deity. People are looking for answers in heaven to say, look, as men, we have tried our best. There are men with children, with families who have said, before God and before men, I've tried. I've tried to look for a job.
Everything.
So they've surrendered everything into the hands of God's share. If you see that, know that we have a problem in terms of political education. We ought to educate the people of Zimbabwe, both in Zimbabwe and the diaspora, to say, look, God is not responsible for your misery. There is a man who has decided to inflict this pain on Zimbabweans. There are men and women who wake up every day and make sure that we look on things that must benefit the people. We must punish the people for choosing the other party and not choosing us. That's why Zimbabweans are being punished for rejecting the regime. That's why they're being punished. So there is a man. There are men and women in this country, my brother. Let me tell you, I was abducted myself, 2016, and tortured in Zanu PF headquarters. So it shows you that there are people in this country who wake up and make it their job to make the lives of ordinary Zimbabweans miserable, and those of us who have chosen to be on the side of the people. It's a very costly exercise at the present moment, but we have to hold forward.
If you ask a Zanu PF supporter, you tell you that Mnangagwa has done tremendously well. They point to the roads, the Harare Masvingo Road. They point to the new parliament. They easily point to the airport. They point to the stability in terms of electricity. They say that at least now there is less load shedding compared to the era of Robert Mugabe. And if you talk to them, they convincingly say so, that economically we are at a better state. And give him another 2 years, Zimbabwe's economy will be like Dubai. Those are the words they use.
Let me tell you, it's good because you have given reference to their rhetoric. And all that rhetoric is in the curriculum of Chitepo School of Ideology.
It's not rhetoric, but it's visible to them.
So look, my brother. Next time when you meet such people, don't ask them about these superficial things, right? Just ask them to say, okay, this is a good point. How much do you have yourself in the bank? They'll tell you that I don't have a bank account. You say, okay, how much do you have in your mattress? Say, my brother, I'm nothing. Or after you cut the interview, some of them, you might not express it because of ethical, or if your ethical standards as a journalist. But some of them I know, as a matter of fact, that after the interview, they'll ask you for money, $1 for transport, and so forth. So when you are an investigative journalist, you go beyond the rhetoric. You would know that beyond their expression, an economy's growth is not about quantity, like they always say. Because that's what Mtuli Ngube says. that our economy is growing, look at the quantity. Those of us who are political scientists and we're looking at the quality of life. The growth of the economy must not be measured on numbers. It must not be growth without equity. That is what we call in economics ruthless economic growth. It's growth with poverty. It's growth with unemployment. It's growth with misery for ordinary people. Growth without medicine. That's not growth. Growth must not be reflected by rhetoric or members who are trying to go and spew dross on interview. But it must be measured by the state of Parenyat. Look at how indignifying nurses were reduced to at Parenyat.
With respect.
Look at the indignity that these civil servants that are holding the country's healthcare system against difficult, because these nurses it's easy to follow these things, my brother. Nurses at a demonstration 2 weeks, right? In 2 weeks, nurses are demonstrating that we don't have salaries, we don't have gloves, we don't have PEE. These were nurses in Parenyat and in Harare Hospital. 1 week after, these nurses who have said, look, we are the primary healthcare practitioners in the country. Give us a decent salary. If you can't, give us working tools. That's what the nurses were saying. That they even asked the presidents in the country to say, do you want us to become prostitutes? That's what they're asking in their placards. 2 weeks after, you know what happened? A caring government like the government in Botswana and South Africa would have had an urgent cabinet meeting and saying we are dealing with this issue of remuneration of healthcare workers in the country. But what did they do? They called another one who came with his daughter to say, we are not solving your salary issues. We are going to choose who's lucky here, who can dance kongonya. And so this is how a government responds to a crisis affecting healthcare workers in the country.
But one would argue that, well, away from the tracking aspect of it, they were renovated. They are dealing with renovation. This is the welfare.
What renovation?
In terms of their building, the where the nurses are going to be staying.
My brother.
Forget about the tracking, I believe.
Let's go to the substance of that.
Yes.
Let's go. I'm prepared to break it down for you. Let's go to that substance. What was being renovated?
It's the residence of...
They put a swimming pool there.
Put a swimming pool.
So
they brought in a better...
These are people who say we don't have... Let's go to that. They're saying we don't have money. We don't have food. We are hungry. Right? So you want them to come with diseases that they've been infected because they don't have PE, and then go to the swimming pool and swim there, live, because this is basic science and biology. They will take the diseases from the corridors of Parenyatwa, take it to the swimming pool, infect the other children who come there, the crisis continues. So what kind of a response is that? So you say that you are hungry, and the solution I give you a swimming pool. What is that? So do you think that those men and women who said we're restoring Lagos in 2017, what do you think they are saying? What is it that they were fighting for? When at the present moment, the argument they gave in 2017, that there are people surrounding the presidents, reducing into a joke of a country. And where are we at the present moment? We are beyond a joke as a country.
Let's quickly move to another aspect of the clause in the CAB3. It deals with the overreach of the military, I would say. They're trying to curtail, to say the military can only do this in confines with the Constitution. Do you think that this probably could, or maybe let me just frame it this way. How does this clause advance democracy as we move forward?
Look, those in the regime who have moved that point, Zimbabwe and so forth, know that. It's part of coup briefing. It is clear you want to remove the military from exercising what at the present moment is their constitutional responsibility. So it's coup proofing for us political scientists. But political science doesn't teach us that to observe it. It also teaches us, that's what the late Professor Makumbe May, so rest in power, taught us, to then use those events to predict. It takes us to the reason why I've said, as a political scientist, it's not a position of the democratic movement, that it is primarily because of those kind of provisions and clauses that will cause securocratic instability within the state. That's why I said, my brother,
but
as a political scientist, that
maybe
proposal, instead of creating stability that they are saying they're going to create, it is going to be a basis, particularly that clause, it is going to be a basis that will come in the not so distant future and say to you, the falcon will not hear the falcon, and the center will fail to hold.
But looking at Gambia, looking at Guinea, looking at Nigeria, if you read the coups that have happened there, was it about constitutional lack of provisions, or it was about the issue of the substance, the living substance of the nation? Do you think that that provision on its own helps or assists, coup-proof Mnangagwa in this regime?
Look, I studied military coup recurrences for my master's at the University of Zimbabwe. So I studied Nigeria, I studied Lesotho. There was a coup that was happening in Lesotho, and Mussolini had ran from the country and so on. I can tell you for certain, like I said to you, and it's an advice I give to Zanu PF without being paid as a consultant, that you are prescribing a wrong problem. You are creating problems for yourselves and your children by that particular move, because you are creating conditions for securocratic erosion within the state. By resolving that, when you are a visionary leader, like Obasanjo did in Nigeria, to say, look, I want to end military coup interventions, you don't do it by twisting and arm twisting the laws of the country. You go and study the causes. And during my research, I used a theory by Collier and Hoffler called greed and grievance theory, which articulates that two fundamental central causes of a military coup recurrence is either you have brought in greed within the elite in the country, or there is a grievance among its ordinary people. That's why the coup in 2017 was
So popular.
Was popular because it was messaged around the popular grievance of the people. And anyone within the ruling establishment at the present moment, with greater respect, will tell you that there is a huge grievance in the country, that any military intervention will be philosophized around that grievance. And that is why some of us who are political scientists would submit with respect to the architect of this current amendment that, look, they argue that we want to cure that. Fair, at law. But you don't start there. If you want to stop coup recurrences, you start by solving what was it that was causing. It is greed of political elites and members of the securocratic establishment and the grievance of the people. So a visionary leader will say, how do we solve the grievances of the people? Let's respect the will of the people. Let's solve the crisis in the country. I'll tell you, my brother, majority of Zimbabweans that we're talking about don't care about politics. Most people don't want to go around wearing that scarf and putting Zanu PF stickers in their car. They want a decent country. People don't care who rules them. That's the reality of Zimbabweans. People really don't care. In fact, I'll go to an extent of saying people also will not care how many terms you have, as long as you are solving their grievance. I studied the system in Canada, which is what the regime would have used as an example. But because they're lazy. You see, in Canada, people don't care about terms. But you know why? Because the government is delivering. And you know what happens in the political culture? It's not stated at law. What happens is that people know that naturally, if I say for a first, second term, I leave. Because leaders lead and leave. Politicians like myself, my brother, ought to be changed. Just like your wife will change diapers of your child for precisely the same reasons. Politicians ought to be changed. That's why some of us have argued even within...
You are a mess.
Precisely the point. Especially these ones. As I think the quality of food makes our mess better. These ones, my brother. So I can tell you that the arena of leadership, which is the greatest lesson I've learned myself, and if you see our personal and individual endeavors as we do as individuals, we are of the understanding that within the democratic movement, we're not going to lead forever. We'll lead and live. So, because we are 14 million in this country, how brilliant one would be to say, I'm the only one with solutions. Do your part, others come. How will it be so beautiful for us to be like Botswana when they were burying their former president now? we see a former head of state, a former president. We don't in this country. The only former we had left there running and died a bitter person. Let's have a former. We have said this to the current president, that look, whether we had disagreements or not in your current 2 terms, we differed fundamentally with the current president in terms of his leadership, right? But as Israelis, we know that he has served. We have said, look, you have an opportunity to leave a legacy. Because what is a man without a legacy? I mean, you've accumulated wealth, you've enjoyed, you've gone everywhere, you've enjoyed life to its zenith. What a man at that level will be worried about is their legacy.
What is Mnanga's legacy in your view?
His legacy must be say, look, I gave birth. I reassured the stability of democracy in the country. Because as the last leadership of the liberation generation, and this debate, by the way, is not in the democratic movement. This debate is in Zanu PF. Go and listen to the spokesperson of those opposing in Zanu PF, the one advocating for this bill. Go and listen to Temba Mliswa and all those who are speaking on behalf of the Tagureis and the Jivais of this world. Go and listen to their argument. They are saying that the liberation generation has done its part.
It's going, definitely.
It must hand over.
Nature is taking course.
That is the governing strategic philosophy of those who want to take over from Mr. Mnangagwa. So, in my view, his legacy is to say, instead of having just a generational transition, let's have an intergenerational consensus to say, because you can't take away from the liberation generation. They had a huge sacrifice and contribution to this country. The nationalists played a role in messing up the liberation legacy. But you can't take away the sacrifice of Joshua Nkomo, can't take away the sacrifice of Tongogar to be where we are today as a country. So, the conversation about some of us, unapologetically, who will take over from the liberation generation, must be to say, how do we build and protect that legacy, build from there, and save what the liberation wanted. It wanted 2 things: universal suffrage, and secondly, land and the economy. They wanted the people, black people, to live better. So, what we should be, what in my view should be Mnangagwa's legacy, is about saying, as the last leadership of the liberation generation, as they assume, it's so my baby, because that's a Zanu PF affair. They might bring another liberation leader. It's their affair. It's not my affair. It's not our affair. But my point is, I can sense from their rhetoric that they're saying we now want to hand over, at least from the benefactors, what they're saying. They're saying that the liberation movement has done their part. I don't know how strong that view is within Zanu PF. That's not my baby. But if that is their view, if that is Mnangagwa's view, then they must make sure that they hand over the country democratically, peaceful, and live a legacy, and live a life, and see other people saying, so that if the new president is to come, it doesn't matter whether that president, by the way, is Zanu or is in the opposition, it doesn't matter, right? Let us go into a fair democratic process as a movement. And the people say you're not organized, you're not what, and decide who they want the country to lead, right? So that if we lose that election, we also congratulate the winner. That should be Mnangagwa's legacy.
But from the look of things, getting a support or even a recognition from the opposition since 2000 has been a dream.
Because elections since 2000 have never been free and fair. That's the answer. If the elections in 2000, we made a commitment. I was in the communications department of the CCC. We made a commitment which we were convinced about that we're going into an election. And this is a commitment we made before the election, when we launched a document called a pre-election pact on reforms. Prepare. The central thesis of that document, my brother, which we submitted to Zanu and all political players, and said, look, let's sit down before the election and agree about the process. We didn't want fundamental reform that overwhelm the state. We said, let's have media reform, let's have political reform, just allow everyone to campaign freely. Allow ZEC, at least, we know that the ZEC's issue is on the logistics committee. We know it. That the fundamental issue on the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is the logistical committee, which is headed by the military. We know that. But we argued to say, let's leave the logistics committee as it is. But let's give each other just media reforms. Let Mr. Mnangagwa go and debate with Nelson Chamisa. Allow us to advertise in ZBC. Allow us to debate. You know, so give us the freedom that we wanted to experience when we went to Kweke when Mboneni was killed. Just give us that. And we're prepared to sign that if you give us this minimum, and remember that document was not cast in stone, we're prepared even to negotiate the contents of the document. To say what is at the minimum reforms, given the, because we're practical, given the time frame we had to go to an election, there's no way we're going to reform the entire ZEC. We said leave Chigumba with a lipstick, leave it. Right? Leave Slaigwan wearing Zanu PF regalia, leave him. We're not arguing about changing commissioners. That relative of the vice president, we said leave her.
Even Mangwana.
We said all of them. Mangwana is the spokesperson of Zanu. We said it's okay. As a permanent secretary, a government employee, civil servant, who's supposed to act provisional and speak on behalf of government, it's okay. Because we have sufficient people to speak and content to sell to the people. We said, leave it as it is, right? If we agree on these ones, we didn't want it just to be rhetoric. We said, let's sit down, have a conference of political parties, including those who got zeros, all of them. Let's talk, they put their views, because we didn't want to impose these views. So that is like, we think we are, no. We wanted everyone to come and debate and say, what are these minimum? Including Linda, without nomination money. It's still fine. We wanted their views there. Once we agree, we sign. Just like we signed the GNU. Something that's binding. So that if we go to an election, we are obliged at law, morally and politically, to say, if we go under these conditions, everyone must accept the election results. We're prepared to do that.
Let's move to the other aspect, probably as we went down, Mr. Ostallos. The issue of chiefs, very topical. The amendment tries to give the chiefs some rights to even state their political party. In your view, I believe, you and I, we have got right to belong in party. Chiefs are human beings. They live and work among us. For crying out loud, let them be. Let them allow them to wear the CCC, wear the Zanu Ndonga, the Zanu PF regalia, and move. What's so special about that?
I mean, that's a very fair point, an assessment. Let's not, because you have moved away from the substance of the debate, which is okay. Let's go to the qualitative debate that you are raising about chiefs. They're human beings, they must enjoy their right. What is the background about the role of the chiefs in the history of this country when it comes to politics? They are reduced into being commissars of political parties across the country. So, if we're in another jurisdiction like South Africa, where a chief can go, do you know that we had chiefs whose families were harassed, some removed, for just being suspected to be supporting the opposition? With rural heads.
But if that provision comes in, they're then allowed to even express it.
No, that's where the problem is. The current setup does not allow them politically, because we are not going into the substance of the provision. The history about the role of the chiefs in this country, it is for that reason. Why? Because we have realized that they were playing a role on behalf of one political party. So to protect citizens from that, the constitutional provision had to come, not to allow them. So what you are basically doing, you are taking them back to 2008, where chiefs were even killing people, opposition supporters. So that provision was actually there to protect ordinary people. Forget that they were still doing it, but you know why? It was better because there was a law that someone would at least seek justice in courts. You get my sense? So that provision was actually there to protect against the hooliganism that was where we saw chiefs leading public campaigns on behalf of Zanu PF. So to protect ordinary people like myself and to get justice, and remember that there are people who have been killed. So to get justice, even if you are dead, for your family to find closure, the solution has always been to say that let's allow that provision to be there. If chiefs were professional, were custodians of our culture and not endangling in politics, all of us are going to support them to enjoy that right. But in the current proposition, it's not possible. So you want to return us back to the half-sleeves that we experienced in 2007 and 2008? We can't. That is precisely where that provision comes in, to protect ordinary Zimbabweans from the abuse, because once you remove it, they can now act with immunity, they can now act with impunity.
Yesterday there was a court process that was underway by some more veterans and also Prince Matubego Swanda, trying to argue or trying to plead with the Concord, to say, please, can you allow this bill to go to a referendum? In your view, from a political perspective, also basing on the history that you have with our courts, do you have faith in it?
Look, I think that the argument that was with respect the CJ Justice Ben Tlachwayo, I suspect, made very fundamental and serious submissions around the constitutional case by the comrades, to say that the clauses that you spoke about, clause 3, I think, and clause 4 of that bill, clearly must go to a referendum. 2, that those bills, if they are to go, they must be separated. There was no need for one bill that tackles those two sacrosanct provisions of the Constitution. So what that does, it lays bare the legal argument that everyone, including ordinary people, have been expressing, that, look, we are not lawyers ourselves. But as ordinary people, we have expressed that view that, look, if that thing is to go, one, it must be separate. The term extension and them benefiting. You get the sense? That's what the judge said. They've reserved their judgment, which is understandable. And everyone who has followed Zimbabwe's criminal justice system and the role of judiciary in our politics will know. We have a new CJ now, 2 years just before her retirement. It is also about her and the bench, what they decide about their leaders and their profession. It's not in our hands. They've seen how courts in South Africa have decided in the case that involves the executive, the case of Cyril Ramaphosa and the impeachment. They ruled that Parliament was supposed to exercise its right to bring the impeachment debate. And we'll talk about the leaders of the current bench in South Africa and their contribution to legal jurisprudence of that country and indeed in the continent. In as much as we talk about the leaders, look, we had a court case where Chief Justice Malaba decided on it in 2018. He is retired now. And you know what happens, my brother? I told you, every man, every human being, particularly those who occupy public office, know that at the end of the day, it's about the leaders. When journalists asked the Chief Justice what is his biggest case and legacy and so forth, he talks about that case because he is human after he leaves that bench. That case haunts him because he knows that he, as Chief Justice Malaba, denied millions of Zimbabweans, including his relatives. That's his legacy. He's gone now. What is left is that Chief Justice Malaba exercised his duty against his conscience and against his training as a lawyer, and denied ordinary Zimbabwean the right to choose leaders of their choice. This bench in the court, doesn't matter what they decide. Some of us, my brother, are in this because we are driven by a conscience. And any human being in this earth has a conscience. The current judge, Chief Justice, she knows. She would decide. Political elites will obviously intervene. We've known that there's a precedence, including the person that left the chair. There will be elites, contradictions. I can tell you for now that the decision that is going to come for us political scientists and ordinary Zimbabwean is going to reflect the extent to which elite contradictions within the current establishment are playing out. The game has left the court of ordinary people. They took it from the people. And they placed it in the hands of elites within the establishment. It's not in our court, that ball. So it is going to express fully the extent of elite contradictions and erosion within the ruling establishment in the country. And those are foundational basis for transition in the country. And those in the regime must know whether they lead a country into a democratic transition or into a semi-half-baked transition, which will eat its own children. Doesn't eat us. I mean, Jonathan Moyo used to insult some of us when we were telling them about the importance of strong institutions and independent institutions. When he was Minister of Justice, we were in the Student Representative Council, arguing with him to say, look, you guys are causing chaos with Zim PF and causing chaos within the education sector because you are enjoying power with impunity and immunity. But he said some of us are ambitious, over-ambitious, are clueless, are unprepared. All these words that you guys would write in newspapers are how they characterized us. But we told them that if you create a democratic, independent institutions of the state, when there are contradictions within your own party, those institutions will serve you. But where is Jonathan? We are here. I mean, I'm not in parliament. I cannot exercise some of my political rights, but I'm free in my country. Where is he? When you listen to those guys addressing rallies across the country, you would say, this system is insurmountable to be dislodged. Because they'd gone across the country, because you see, the gods will make you crazy, for they're about to come for you. And you behave exactly what we are seeing today. I mean, it defies logic, even by Zanu PF standards, what we are seeing today. Everything. But you know why? Because when you are at the epoch, you have to do those things. Because they are the basis upon which a transition will emerge.
What will stop CAB3?
It is going to be a combination of both elite erosion and people power.
People power coming from where?
From the
because I'm looking at a woman in Kobalanda, in Chabalala. I'm looking at a woman in Makokoba, in Gutu, in Zimba, who probably, out of abundance of caution, would want to express a view to say, I hate this CAB3. But there's no person to lead here. Number one. Number two, I'm looking at a youth, at a student who has seen a comrade being jailed with no support.
Some of us, my brother, we are younger people. Some of us. With the fortitude to fight. And Che Guevara instructs us from his historical experience in the trenches. But you know what's fun about political experiences is that nothing is new.
Definitely.
Nothing happens in this. So that's why some of us take a leaf and instructions from history. And Che Guevara, experiencing this as a young person, as a young revolutionary, ended up saying, there are no liberators. Liberators don't exist. The people liberate themselves. So that's why myself, I'm convinced without doubt that we have come to a moment that we have an understanding as a people that, look, like I said, no one is going to emerge from the north or the south or the west to save us as a people. No one. We have to liberate ourselves. I can't quantify that in terms of time. I can't quantify that. The problem is that we are mid-aged, so you are leading towards the older generation that keeps on telling you that you must continue looking for a liberator. We're not looking for one. Because the material conditions of our reality instructs us in terms of what has to be done. So you see, when revolutionary whirlwinds emerge, they emerge at a time when young people in Soweto in 1976 were still following what the ANC was saying in exile. Comrades were enjoying tea in exile and saying that we are going to continue fighting Louis Botha by letters, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, Satyagraha strategy on non-violence. They continue to write letters to the regime in Pretoria.
Most the youths were...
And young people said, no, we are drawing the line. And when they drew the line, everyone else, including the ANC, they condemned them. Said, no, you're being too ambitious and so forth and so on. But they organized themselves and changed the entire political direction of the country that they are enjoying today.
Do you foresee that happen?
Let me tell you, my brother, I don't have to foresee it.
No. We live in a reality.
Let me tell you.
Grounded by facts.
Let me tell you. That's why I'm saying that. The facts on the ground are taking us exactly where I'm talking about. The facts on the ground. Because 6 years ago, people could afford to earn a living. People would try to survive, right?
Today they've been told that everyone will be a millionaire.
So the problem is that you keep on looking for us. Keep on saying, I'm looking for that one. You keep on looking for heroes. And when you see the status of those, you say, there's nothing shame. Because you are looking at people that you have dubbed heroes. You get the point? I'm telling you that you must move your eyes from there. You would know where it is going to emerge from. And that's the advantage about history and society. It looks impossible, I don't doubt that. It looks impossible because we're a police state. So if I want to do a demonstration out there or be arrested, people look at me, it looks impossible. But where there's been change in society, have you seen it where people say it is possible? Where? Go and study all transitions that are led by the people across the world. Where? When all these detectors across the world, all of them without exception, when the people decided to say enough is enough, no one was there to save them. And all of them were not prepared. Go and study in Tunisia. When a young person decided to sacrifice himself as a university graduate in the streets of Tunisia, it turned around the direction. But at the time, the regime was convinced that, look, we've done everything to be safe, that everything, police state, no one was expressing themselves. And when it happened, it emerged from there, it went into Egypt, it went into Syria. All those regimes had power, had money, had control of the securocratic state. All arms of government, the courts, no right to exercise your religion, your political expression, it was just not there. But change happened in those countries.
So Ostallos, you are telling me that you in your view, it's the people who liberate themselves.
Precisely.
Without a leader. And from my reading of politics, an unled struggle is the most dangerous one.
Precisely. I agree.
But in your view, do you think that as the current leaders of the opposition, you have failed them?
Look,
you have failed the people who have for long have put trust in you.
Look, because you keep on raising the question to me. I was trained by the International Socialist Organization, and naturally we train not to speak about ourselves, to say, I did this, I did that. I told you without doubt, you people and citizens can make their judgments around our role as a democratic movement, and can also make a judgment around us as individuals, which is okay.
But I want it as a collective.
I live freely today in my conscience, because I know, I told you, my brother, that this regime did not just send fear to people. It sends trinkets and trappings of power. It offers people. And all of us were not an exemption from the offers of the regime, including a seat that we had to give up on the basis of principle that, look, we are not in a better state as a movement. We've been assaulted, because what happened, my brother, was not an attack on a party. What you continue saying, that the leadership collective of the... Someone sat down and said, we want to destroy the entire core and fabric of society. So they did not destroy just the CCC, which is the mistake that all of you do. They did not do that. They targeted all the pillars of constitutional democracy in the country. Where did they start? They started with the courts. They knew that part of our theater of the struggle is going to be the courts. They went to the courts and gave Mulaba another mandate outside the provisions of the Constitution. Yes. So the core of the Constitution did not start now with this amendment. They gave Malaba, they realized that we've tightened in the courts. Because they knew that the court are a critical theater. Because they knew that even if we are to go to the streets, we have to end up going to the court. When they had a restore legacy mission, they rode tankers in the streets, but everything was concluded at the court. So they knew that even if these people are going to fight us in the streets, they have to go to the court. So let's destroy that pillar. Because most of us were not lawyers, we're not in the judiciary. We said that's not our struggle. We said let the lawyers and those interested law fight their battles.
And that's the culture of Zimbabweans.
And then after that,
as long as I'm not affected,
after that, what did they do? They went for all progressive business people. We said, we're not business people. Let them deal with their own issues. This guy, this pastor, what his name is, a business guy, this pastor, who started to speak out, Munez, they targeted him. We didn't speak out because no, it's their issue in the church. We said we have no interest. After that, they went for the progressive members of the media. They started assaulting, buying. Either they buy you, they chuck you out, they threaten you. They went for all the progressive members of the media, one by one. Arrested some, until people say, let's just write about dialogue and peace in the country. Some with their conscience, they left the compromised media institutions. Right? We said that we're not going to speak out because we're not journalists. After that, they went for civil society. Started PVO bill. They started stripping all, because they knew that if people don't express themselves through a party, they express themselves through the civil society. They went after them, took their money, closed them down, so forth. Right? We didn't speak out because we said we are not members of this civil society.
So this is more
After
like
that,
an organized
they went
movement.
for political parties. Some of us, when they went for political people, said, we're going to speak out because we are not in the political party. After that, let me tell you, the recalls that you are all saying were subjects of internal contradictions. Chabangu didn't know all those people. Even in his own confession, Chabangu, for example, didn't want to recall someone like me. You get the point? That list came from the regime.
Because he was exposed.
And look, they were not just saying we are just removing members of parliament. There was a method.
To the madness.
There was a method to the madness, to the removal. That we want this one for specific political reasons. You get the point? So, don't think that those who were not recorded were like, no, my brother. It was something started to say, what are the pillars? Because you know why? When all of us thought we are solving our internal fights with Chabang and all, these people knew that after this bill has to go to parliament. They knew that the bet was going to be in parliament. I never was afforded an opportunity to even give a maiden speech in parliament myself. First day, I was removed from parliament. Second day, removed from parliament. Third time, there was a recall letter. So do you think, and you can ask citizens, do you think if I was in parliament and we were going to vote for the bill, do you think I was going to vote for the bill?
So you think that currently parliament as it is, it's a walkover?
Because the game was played long time ago, when everyone was still thinking it's about Chamisa and lack of his structures. These guys knew that we're going to bring this bill into parliament. And they knew that the people that were going to live there are people who are worried about their careers. There are progressive people in parliament. I wouldn't lie. They are.
With respect, maybe I'll abuse your relationship with Chamisa. With respect, do you think Chamisa, there's been this talk to say his silence, because in armed struggle, silence is a message. His silence is in support of the. Look, more so coming from a perspective whereby you are a student of political theory, to say that you can't be silent, you can't take a neutral position in a fight. It's either you are for or against. There's nothing called neutrality.
Look, I don't think that Advocate Nelson Chamisa, as our president, is quiet about the bill. He has expressed his views. People ask him to say, look, tell us in black and white, are you for or against the bill? First he spoke himself to say it's a no to CAB3, right? And he spoke, even via his spokesperson, to say, look, I'm against this bill. And what I think he should do, because of access to him, are things that I expressed to him. You get the point? And people have always argued, no, you young people must do this, you must tell Chamisa this. Look, I have access to the president. I don't have to go and tell him through the internet my views and thoughts about the direction that the movement must go. Secondly, one of the critical characteristics of a comrade, my brother, Because I told you, some of us are in a struggle, despite the assault that we've suffered. And I must admit, we have suffered assault, just like all of you. Just like every Zimbabwean who's part and parcel of the pillar of democratic institutions in the country. We've been assaulted. So our starting point is accepting. We've accepted that, look, we've been assaulted. And it's not only us. That's why you see that there is a common message to people who might not agree on tactics and strategies. There is a common message, even among us comrades that we have differences with political. There is a common message that all of us, my brother, all of us without exception, are rejecting this bill.
But there's a feeling, Ostallos, that the opposition is so concentrated in fighting amongst each other, and not looking at the bill or looking at Zanu PF and its machinations. That's the feeling and a very strong belief. You guys, you are so much focused on who should lead. Chamisa can't, BT can't, Monzora can't. At the end of the day, Zanu PF is saying we can, and they are.
Look, we have made our submissions, and they are public. Our submissions around what should happen. After appreciating that there's been an assault to the institutions of democracy in the country, that's why you see that the assault was to the progressive movement. It was never to other parties, right? The assault was to strong civil society institutions. It was not to every civil society organization. They targeted institutions in the civil society, targeted members of judiciary, targeted journalists. It was not to everyone. So all of us as a people, all of us, my brother, to do service to our country and to the ordinary people who bestowed this responsibility. Because as a journalist yourself, you also have an obligation morally to society. Right? So all of us, I don't think that we're at a moment where we should be pointing fingers to say this one is wrong, this one is right. My personal views, and I've expressed them publicly. And the reason why we've expressed them is because in this whole debate, we've got a bigger responsibility. It places too much burden on our shoulders.
Definitely.
That is what troubles some of us. If our party was that of Kisnos Mukwash, we would just say whatever we want.
And forget about it.
The reason why we guard our tongues, we guard our conversations, we guard our experiences, is because so much responsibility has been placed by millions of Zimbabweans. I had more than 15,000 people in Chabalala expressing that responsibility in me. That's why the official conversation and position of the democratic movement has always been that the progressive forces, and when I say the progressive forces, I'm talking about the students, journalists, the church, civic society, labor, and so forth. All of us who understand that we are at crossroads as a country ought to understand what has to be done. That's why we don't invest in the bickering. Yes, there might be bickering, there might be pontification. But the reason why we've remained consistent, go and check our official messaging. It is consistently about building a credible alternative so that ordinary men and women in this country who are expressing what you are saying, fair. We understand that it is placed in our shoulders a moral obligation to build a platform that is credible, that becomes an alternative, not a replacement of Zanu PF in his culture, character, and composition, but also can create a space where ordinary men and women of this country, who have so much dislike for the current status quo, can find political expression, which answers in black and white your question to say people ought to be organized. That's fair. Our job, my brother, where we are, is to create a platform so that people can come in and express themselves politically and reject this current status quo. So we know, as a matter of fact, we are conscious and we are seized with that responsibility, right? That, look, for the mandate that we've been placed, and most people come and tell us, no, but you guys, comrades, you know that your time is not going to last. We are conscious. What matters, my brother, in a struggle like this one, is a protected struggle. It's not a short-term struggle.
Because came in left.
But you know why?
We have achieved quite.
But you must understand one thing, my brother, that struggles are protected world over. if you had to follow the American struggle for independence in that difficult 100 years, what do you think was happening to establish the system that they have today? The more than 3 decades of the struggles of Azania to be what South Africa is today. People capitulate in the road. We want it to end tomorrow, but we also follow dictates of reality that we have not achieved. But we must say, okay, this is what we've achieved. This is how we've been assaulted. We have to regroup. This is how we rebuild. Because you know why, my brother? The easier option for all of us was to say, okay, we are leaving. But you know why some of us, a person like myself, because I get offers as an individual to go and study abroad, to stay abroad, and so forth. Because everyone, when they see it, they say, but look, you have done your best. But the reason why I remain in the trenches, despite these challenges, is because in communities where I stay, there are thousands of people whose life depends on political change in this country.
Which are not delivering.
Look, we might want it to be delivered yesterday. We might want it to be delivered today.
And it's like you're taking back the struggle. Look, you have allowed Zanu PF to even go back to the era. Everything, the era of the dark, as you would want to characterize it.
Look, we have, where we are, if I had spoken to you maybe some 1 year, or 2 months, or 7 months ago, my admission would have been different. What gives me hope and fortitude to fight is because I have an understanding that we have the capacity, we have the fortitude, we have the responsibility to fight. That does not, everything that happened yesterday, from yesterday up to September 99, when we started the democratic, everything that had happened, including the minute I stepped here, everything belongs to the dustbin of history. Its only role is to either inspire us, give us lessons. Because history must give us lessons. I can't be stuck, we can't be, as a leadership, as a vanguard of democracy in this country, we can't be stuck in yesterday. That's why I find no appetite about debating and discussing Chabangu, and this one is after this one and there. But all those things belong to the dustbins of history. What it can only do is to inform us how to become better leaders, especially when we've taken stock. Because any serious organization takes stock. We don't do it in front of cameras where we can sit and say, but you messed up there, you messed up there, we messed up there, and so forth, right?
So you've done a stock.
We did an internal stock of what worked,
everything,
what didn't work,
from
everything.
From the 20, we begin maybe critically, when Nelson Chamisa took over, because
the raw data captures, let me tell you, we have got raw data that captures not just our experience as a democratic movement in the leadership of President Chamisa from 99. Because you know why? Like I told you, all the CCC experience, the MDC Alliance experience, the MDCT experience, the MDC experience, and the virus splits that happened, morphing into MDC Green, PDP, and so forth. All those experiences, right now, their only job, my brother, are not for us to wallow every day and say, this one, and then continue say, you did that. No. That's not what a revolutionary does. A revolutionary says, I'm down. I have to pick myself up.
When
and
do you
then
see action? How long do you want us to wait for action?
Look, I'm not here to talk about time frames and so forth, right? Because once I've got that responsibility to talk about that, I'll come. I would not need you to invite me. I will tell you that, my brother, because I might not be charged with that responsibility. One of the most important things to survive in an organization and for people who want to govern is discipline. You can't be a comrade if you can't exercise institutional discipline. You know, that small contradictions there, no. Because I've told even comrades who say, no, but you must say this. I say, but ask yourself, if you are the leader, I'm in the organization, I'm not outside the movement. I'm in the movement. We put you, or say you are now the leader. Would you want us, as part of the leadership collective, to go and express whatever we think you should do better and do good in the public platform? Would you want your own family as a father, your kids, to go and wash your linen in the public? When history and our culture as African tells you that you don't wash your linen in the public, you have to come and say, Dad, these are the issues that we think we must be solved, right? Until you say you have reached a point which the freedom we exercise to be in the organization is a freedom that one can exercise and say, I don't want to be part of this movement because of 1, 2, 3, then you express yourself. But as long as, my brother, any organization that I'll be part of, myself, my legacy is going to be centered around institutional discipline. Once we say we are part of this family, we must exercise the discipline that is needed, because that organization will only survive on the basis of that. But it also requires that if you are exercising that discipline, you also exercise the honesty that we are instructed as the revolutionary, that you tell no lies, you claim no easy victories, you expose all contradictions. Amongst your own comrades, you say, look, but you comrades, go and have a conversation. As journalists, you talk to people off record. Our comrades within the organization, they will tell you that we have moments, especially now, where we are coming from moments of reflection. Was what this challenge offered us as a movement are moments of reflection, where we were able to tell each other. Some of it has leaked into the media. Sometime, I think, I remember one of the conversations leaked into the media, where we were confronting each other as comrades. I said, no, but you didn't well there. I was a spokesperson of the organization in Fatsai. Right? So we are measured in terms of that responsibility. I was a cluster leader in Lupane, where I was supposed to bring victory for the organization. Tell you what, when I put my CV internally within the organization to our members, we give them our CV to say, look, you are choosing the next leadership of the organization. These are our results in terms of how we spoke for and on behalf of the oppressed people in our country, and also how we delivered. We won in Lupane, all the seats in Lupane, where we were deployed by the organization, right? So when we evaluate amongst each other, we say, okay, you were in elections. What did you do? You were in organizing. You were in fundraising. You were in this. You were in this, including the presidents. To say, these are the responses that were charged by you. You said this, we expected this, you said that, we said. But those are honest, robust conversations. Some of them leaked into the media. That's why we could not dismiss them at the time. But they were not supposed to be in the media because they are about the health of the institution. Because internally, you ought to tell each other the truth as comrades. I don't have to go and tell Zanu PF people about our problems as a movement. I have to tell my own comrades to say, look, comrades, this is not what we signed up for. You get the point? Because our conscience tells us that. And that's why people win and lose, and that's how some countries can emerge. Because some of us exercise that truth-telling, but we do it within the platforms of the organization.
Do you think CAB will succeed? CAB3? Given everything that we've discussed about.
It depends on what you say is success.
Success in the sense that...
Are you saying success in terms of it being signed into law?
Signed into law and also taking effect.
I don't think that it will take effect. It might be signed.
What will stop it?
But we're discussing the conditions of why it will not take effect. It might be signed because, let's be honest, the process, if it goes into parliament and cabinet and signed, that's it. But I think that there will be difficulty in that thing taking effect. I strongly, and I'm not speaking on behalf of an organization or movement, as a political scientist who have studied events, I can tell you that we'll come here and I'll tell you that the falcon cannot hear the falcon. The center can no longer hold, as we're instructed.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother.
That was Ostallos Siziba talking to us, or taking us through the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3. In his belief, he says that it will fail. At what point? We don't know yet. From me, and the crew, I wish please follow us, like the page, and stay tuned. More is coming as we try to unpack the bill and also its effect on Zimbabweans. Thank you.